Hello, hello. How are you? It's a little low there. There we go. Like that better. How are you, everyone? I'm sorry for it's a bit of a slow delay to get this one going. There is quite a bit happening behind the scenes. Your boy has been quite busy, but here I am, ready to go. All right, let's do this. Welcome, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas. Welcome to episode 274 of my live chat. Let's see what's on the docket today. UFC 323 announcements. We got Silva Weidman 3 happening next month at the Jake Paul Tank Davis card? I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. It's like, Anderson, didn't you just get $10 million in this lawsuit? Okay, whatever. We'll talk about that. Please, somebody ask me about that California State Athletic Commission hearing yesterday. I don't think people really understand exactly what just happened. They think this is some kind of weird bureaucratic formality, which in some sense it is. It's a lot more than that, brother. That was one of the most insane things I've ever seen in all of my time covering combat sports regulatory affairs. I think only like two things stand out as more absurd, which was when they tried to ban in Nevada, tried to ban Nick Diaz 5 years for marijuana, or the TRT hysteria, blowback. But short of that, that might have been the most insane thing I've ever seen in all of my many years covering combat sports. That was fucking bananas. That was bananas. Anyway, we can get to that and anything else on your mind. Thumbs up if you haven't already. Hit subscribe if you haven't. The way this works is I post a thread on the post section here at youtube.com/Luke Thomas. You guys fill it up. We'll go for about an hour on those questions. And then if you either put a donation into the super chat or you're a member, you can contribute to that portion for free. But if you're not one of those, you want to just fire in a donation, they go a long way. It is greatly appreciated. Last, but certainly not least, to kick off the show here as we get things going, if I may, our friends here at Tooletries, LT20, LT20, site-wide off, TOOLETRIES.com for all of your grooming needs. Tooletries.com is going to set you off right. They are the proud sponsor on this channel of all live programming. So when you take advantage of this and use this code, not only are you buying quality, not only are you buying quality at a reduced price, a meaningfully reduced price, which, by the way, we could all use right about now, but you're also helping me out and helping out this channel big time. So we thank our friends at Tooletries for their generous support, and I thank all of you for being here, and hope you take part in this as well. All right, without further ado, let's get this party started, shall we? There it is. I was looking for it. Hang on. My eyeglass cleaner. I needed it because the Tookster will just grab my glasses like this. And I'm like, sweet thing, please don't grab the lenses. And she'll be like, oh, okay, Dad. And then go right back to grabbing the lenses. You know what I'm saying? That's how you know you're raising a child. They just don't hear you. But all right. Other than that, I hope you're doing well. I cannot believe that thing in California yesterday. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. I cannot believe what they're trying to pull. Well, what they're going to pull off. I mean, it's all going to be successful. By the way, heads up on this. Some of the some of the committee hearings in Washington, D.C., obviously, which is where I live, around the proposed Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. This is the amendment, essentially, functionally anyway, the amendment to the Ali Act. They're going to have those hearings, it looks like, according to reporting from John Nash, as early as November 5th. I looked up November 5th on the calendar. November 5th is a Tuesday. I'll be there. You can just go to congressional hearings if you live here. Some of them can be protected. It's not like every single one you can go to, but the vast majority of them, you can just queue up 20 to 30 minutes before they open and go. And so I will. I will absolutely do that. So I have to wait and see when they actually get scheduled. And obviously, schedule permitting, but if it's Tuesday, November 5th, I'll be there. No question about it. Oh, and of course, this is our friends at Substack here as well. If you're interested in that, I have a piece up today. Actually, I put it up yesterday, but it's up right now. On, did you guys see this UFC fighter, AJ Cunningham? He's 0-1 in the Contender Series, 0-2 in UFC proper. So he's 0-3 in organizational bouts. Now he has since, I'm not sure exactly of the timeline, but he has since closed his IG, I think taken down his IG account, and then at least closed his Facebook accounts, or limited the visibility of the Facebook ones anyway, because he was posting I'm not one of these like, oh, he's posting, stuff that can, I'm interpreting that he's a Nazi. I'm saying he's posting swastikas. He's posting quotes and imagery of Goebbels. Straight up unambiguous Nazi imagery. Now, again, he's taken down or at least closed off access to a lot of his social accounts since some of this has gotten a little bit more attention. Training partner of Bryce Mitchell, by the way. And it's just very, very funny to me. Like, the UFC will allow that kind of a thing, which, by the way, like, you could cut him on grounds that, like, he's not good. And, unless you really believe there's a core Nazi contingent in your fan base, I don't think they'd really revolt if you cut him. But more to the point, they don't want to, right? Because they've got this, like, totally phony sense of what free speech is. And I'm like, dude, if your free speech model enables people to use slurs, but it doesn't allow them to critique the promoter or make even fair criticisms of the way in which they're leveraging their power, you don't have a free speech model. You have a slur speech model. Like, you can judge a free speech model by the fruits that it bears. What are the fruits of their model? Is it fighters having an unusual amount of candor that they're able to leverage or exercise in various media interviews or more broadly on their social media? No, of course not, because there's problems when you do that, right? But I mean, Oli oxen free if you want to just post Nazi shit on your social media, I suppose. Kind of fun. We live in a very fun age, if I do say so myself. All right, enough of that grandstanding. Let's get to your questions. So we'll go, as I mentioned, it's 3:13. We'll go for about an hour on these, and then we'll get to the paid ones a little bit later in the show. All right, without further ado, let me take this off as well. Excuse me, media. Okay, take that down. And now let's get this on the screen. All right. Let's do it this way. Okay. Can you see that? Yes. Is that the first one? Yeah. Okay. Here, I'll start it here. So some people don't like it when I highlight, so I'm going to leave it like that. All right. Look, Petr Yan hasn't finished anybody since a post-prime Jose Aldo over 5 years ago. Do you think his lack of finishability will ultimately lead to his demise against Merab? How much of a chance do you really give Yan going into this fight? Now, what's kind of interesting about this fight is that I saw John Wood. Actually, let me open this up. I've got no sponsorship. Just, I like their stuff. This is the Liquid Death Severed Lime. Murder your thirst. Guys, doesn't have to be this aggressive. All right. Hang on. Wow, that's actually pretty good. Okay. There's a bit of a debate happening now between Yan and Merab about who was more injured heading into that bout. And Yan saying he was like deeply compromised, and Merab being like, well, I was also compromised. And I know Merab's coach, John Wood, has like doubled down on that fact that, like, whatever injuries he might have had, talking about Yan, that's great. But, rest assured that Merab wasn't going in there even approximating 100%, which I have to tell you, I'm inclined to believe. I mean, this is the sort of the common challenge that we always get. That is two things. One, I think Yan against the very, 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 very best in this division. He is competitive and can beat many, if not, nearly all of them. Obviously not all of them, but he can do really quite well. But at the same time, there's a question about, like, even when winning efforts against guys like, Marcus McGee. I mean, that was a little bit more of an outsized one. But, in other cases, let me pull up his resume here. Let's see. So since losing 3 in a row to Aljamain, which was controversial, then Sean. Well, no, that was the split one, so that's different. So I get to Aljamain, Sean O'Malley, also controversial. That particular one was, and then Merab, not controversial. He beat Song Yadong, Devison Figueiredo, and then Marcus McGee. He went to decisions with all 3 of them. One was a 3-round bout, 2 or 5-round bouts, so 13 rounds. Excuse me, no, 2 or 3-round bouts. So it is just 13 rounds the whole way through. No, what am I saying? Sorry, 6 plus 5, 11. We just got off of a pay-per-view media cycle where the guy in the headlining bout had a significantly different energy and frankly approach and ultimately an outcome that he had clearly articulated was related to the reason why there was an upgrade was because the last time he had, just a woeful amount of either injuries or issues that were derailing him. And it's like, it's one of those things where I know the fans hate it. I know they think that there is like certain forms of etiquette around some of these questions, which I don't think is necessarily unfair about like what's the right way to reveal that you may have been severely compromised. To me, it's like having been in this business as long as I have, I'm just telling you, this is so common that these guys will go in there with injuries you could not believe. Sometimes they'll win, many times they don't. But the common denominator is that their willingness to believe that they can, or the pressure because if they don't capture in that window, they have no idea if it's coming back again, or less so at the title level, but in certain other cases, obviously a financial incentive to just get your what they call show money, which is bout completion money, essentially. All of those factors weigh in here. The issue that you're up against with Yan is that he's very, very talented. I do think he has good takedown defense. I think he obviously flows well between multiple dimensions of a game, but he doesn't have the motor that Merab has. Merab's ability to just like spam you with offense is extremely difficult to deal with. And while I think he can fight the hands and get up and make an interesting account of himself, and of course, Yan is a very, very good striker. If you give him space and time, it's a long bout. If it goes long, you're giving a guy who's a good striker a lot of opportunities to do something. I would not rule out the possibility that he could have a significantly different fight in a rematch, which is why I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, a champion like a decorated weight class champion and what Merab is attempting to become here, right? Merab is, I made a video about this, but I even left out some things that I think deserve to be acknowledged. He's trying to become the first fighter to win or to have 4 title defenses in a single year. Again, you might think the debate is already over, and in fact, it might be, but certainly if Merab gets this, it's the debate is over about who the greatest bantamweight of all time is. At that point, it would now be absurd to claim it's somebody else, right? So again, you could make the argument now, but even if you want to be very, very generous to the Cruzes and the Dillashaws or the Aljamains of the world, a win against Yan here would settle that debate completely. One thing I didn't mention is, you're also looking at one of the best years in UFC championship history beginning to end. John Jones having 4, I don't know if I have to go back and look, his 4 fight, I think his 2011 was pretty good. Shogun's 2005 was pretty good. We have to go back and look, but that's what we're talking about here. Merab's 2025 would be, at least in theory, on par with many of them. Again, we'll have to see what result he ultimately turns in if he can get the W. But like, this is what he's attempting here. Fighter of the year, solidifying without any doubt bantamweight of the year, best single calendar year for a UFC fighter ever. I mean, he is on the precipice of an enormous amount. And the reality is, they bring us up to say, the very best champions, like, they had to see their better contemporaries a couple of times to really solidify it. You know what I mean? Like, John Jones had to fight DC twice. Some of that was about getting the title back, but he had to fight Gustafsson twice. And I realized that the rematches were, not necessarily as interesting as the first fights, but that was all part of it. Like, that's one of the last steps that's really kind of important for solidifying a place in combat sports history when you want to be a great all-time weight class champion, is you got to see some of these guys a couple of times, both out of necessity, because those are the best contenders, and also like they're gonna like giving somebody who's very, very good a second crack at you. That's a tough challenge, man. They know what it's like to be in there with you. They've seen the subsequent tape as a in the time between their last fight and now. And again, if it's not an immediate rematch, that could be a significant amount of tape. Doing that is actually really, really important for making a name. You're asking about, like, what about Yan? I haven't seen anything with Yan that tells me his game, it looks radically different than the first time. Improved, sure. A little more pep in his step, perhaps. A threat, absolutely. But if, like, anybody is getting better fight over fight in a visible kind of way, it is clearly Merab. Even if Merab wasn't as compromised in the first fight, the amount of progress he's made since then in the development of his game, to me, clearly surpasses what Yan has put together. Yan was ahead of him, and I think still remains ahead of him in the striking department, and certainly some other phases and unique dimensions as well. But Merab is turning into a force. He's turning into a striking force. He's hard to hurt. He's hard to do anything against. He's hard to maintain control over. He's hard to define the terms of the experience against. Like, he's just very, very difficult to do anything against. So again, we're coming off of 320 where Poatan showed sometimes these guys really do have very, very different performances for very good reasons. But at the same time, I just don't know what I've seen since then that leads me to believe, like, oh, wow, this is the guy to beat Merab. Oh my God. I get so much text spam these days. It's bonkers. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, great question. Great question. How do you see Oliveira Holloway 2 playing out? Man, what a fight this is going to be. This will be the best grappler Max has ever faced. Do you think he can stay safe on the ground, get back up, and piece up Charles on the feet, given that it'll most likely be a 5-round fight? Max's pace could cause issues for Charles. Man, I don't think folks have any idea how. I mean, of course, I don't think there's enough appreciation for how good this fight's going to be. Charles is certainly more weathered since their first time. Max is infinitely more weathered since their first fight. But the first fight was weird, and it was nothing to it. There was a pretty quick injury, and this was at a stage of Oliveira's career where he was a bit flaky. He wasn't a bit resilient. And part of like the reason, for example, that guys like Justin Gaethje dogged him before his fight with Oliveira about being a quitter was because of, not exclusive though, but because of fights like that one. He would just, things would just fall apart against opponents in ways that was like quick and unexpected and kind of weird. And, he took a lot of abuse. He was talented, but you're like, this guy's fatally flawed. And then he went on the run he went on. Now, both have taken an enormous amount of damage. It just seems to me like the game is relatively obvious, right? If you're Max Holloway, you have to avoid close contact at all costs, right? That jab of Max is going to be pumping constantly. And you have to know Charles is going to move forward on you like Ilya said he would. And he did it against Gamrot too. It's like, yes, as I said on MK, that's a great way to fight Gamrot because look how well it worked. But the reality is probably Oliveira's fighting everybody that way, or most people anyway, that way. And he's certainly going to fight Max that way. He's just his best typically when he does that, with some exception. That's just how he feels comfortable getting his offense going. So the point I'm trying to make is if you're Max Holloway, dude, the jab, footwork are going to be absolutely critical here. Frames, clinch break, sprawling, takedown defense, but again, footwork, not even being close enough to get pressed up against the fence. Because once you do, one of the things you've noticed is I've already recorded it. It'll probably go out tomorrow. I'm thinking maybe I'll wait till Saturday, depending how I feel. But I recorded a bit of a breakdown of some of the things Charles Oliveira did in his last fight. And one thing that's sort of really becoming abundantly clear to me is Charles is obviously not the best wrestler, but his ability to find the back is getting better by now use of mat returns from the body lock. So, for example, you've seen it for a while, but now he's getting better as guys are adjusting to him. One of the things that he does, and you'll see this in the video that I make, he gets this body lock on Tony Ferguson, and what does he do? He obviously gets to a perpendicular angle, and when they use a knee shield on him, so they're standing and they're putting their shin in his hip, essentially, to prevent him getting, hip-to-hip contact or, getting tripped out as a consequence for it. He'll raise them up to drop the hook and then return them to the mat. He did it successfully against Tony Ferguson in their bout, I think a couple of times. But certainly in that first round, he was able to do it, right? He's very, very effective off that knee shield press when he gets to a body lock. You saw Gamrot do it as well. So what did you notice, right? Same as the Ferguson fight. He raises him up, he drops him down, but you saw that Gamrot's able to maintain the knee shield. So what does he do? He just runs him, I think it was clockwise, and that drops the shield, but then he comes back the other way to then cover the back. Like, so whether it's leg entanglements, pulling guard, body locks, body lock trips, body lock mat returns, dude, that is where fights go from bad to worse for his opponents. If you're a Max Holloway, yeah, you have to have a plan in the event that you get to that position, but you have to believe all effort is going to be put into never getting to that position. Meanwhile, if you're Oliveira, you kind of have to crash into Max here a little bit. And you can imagine, to the point you raise, Max hasn't really fought a guy like this before in terms of the things he can do. Max hasn't fought a guy who's got back takes and leg entanglements. Like, Max has great submission defense, and Max has great takedown defense, and Max has great ability to get up such that he is taken down, which is pretty rare, but it does happen time to time. He's got a bunch of skills, but never against a single person who's got them all together in that same kind of way, who applies them in the way that Charles Oliveira does. It's amazing, dude. The guy's 36, been through all of that, still a very, very unique threat in this division. So to me, it's really about what range this fight is going to be fought at. To the extent that a guy like Oliveira can get to that body lock, I think Max is in trouble. To the extent that Max is pushing him around with the jab, circling, front kicks, as he comes in, stealing on him to really discipline and damage that forward pressure, it's Max's fight to lose. It really is a very interesting test case. Now, the big question, of course, is what happens if Oliveira does get him down and get his back? How good is Max's submission defense? Again, from what we know, it's pretty good, but it's just never been audited in the way that Oliveira has the unique capacity to audit it. So that's why this fight to me is like, dude, of all the fights that they could make, I'm not saying it's my number one fight, but it actually isn't far off from it. You got two old but still viable war horses, and their first fight means almost nothing, to be honest with you. This is the one where everything is much more interesting. Can you see the top? Yeah, here we go. Luke, if Usman comes to the UFC, who would you, Usman Nurmagomedov, I'm assuming you mean, who would you potentially match him up against in the top 10 or top 15 in lightweight, given the disastrous debuts of Patchy Mix and Aaron Pico? I don't necessarily think it's the matchmaking that was the problem. Maybe the moment got to them, but I feel there should be caution in terms of matchmaking for Usman nonetheless, if they are to make the best out of his talent and potential. It's a great question. Let's take a look at who we have here in the rankings so that we can make a more, accurate call. So in the top 15 of lightweight, you have Mauricio Hufi, Grant Dawson, Benoit Saint Denis, Michael Chandler. Chandler would be a good one. I mean, I don't know if he'll be around by that time, but let's say it happened soon. Moicano would be another good one. Fiziev, another good one. Dariush is a good one. And then Gamrot. I mean, any of those are going to be tough as shit. You could go higher than that, too. You could give him Dan Hooker. You could give him Usman Nurmagomedov versus Paddy Pimblett. That's kind of a sick fight. If I'm just being honest, it's kind of a sick fight. I think Usman's pedigree is obviously pretty high, and I think his ability to do certain things that his contemporaries cannot, even in the UFC lightweight division, should not be overlooked. Let me see something here. There. Okay. Yeah. I mean, to your point, you don't give him somebody in the top 5. Okay, fine. So you could go Paddy, Hooker, Gamrot, Dariush, Fiziev. If you're going against Nurmagomedov, you would want someone who could, at least in theory, resist some of his takedowns. Patty would do that. Dariush would be a real tough fight in that regard. That'd be a fun one. Do Dariush versus Nurmagomedov would be a fun one as well. I just don't know if they would do that because they wouldn't want him to have as a promotional entity. Yeah, I suspect that they would maybe match him. If they wanted to match him tough, they'd match him with Dariush. If they wanted to match him in a way to like kind of set him up, not that Hooker's a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination, or that Hooker couldn't win, but again, Nurmagomedov's ability to find the back and transition through there is so good. I think he'd give a lot of guys a lot of problems in that division. But to your point, it wouldn't even need to be close to the top of that division to still be a very meaningful challenge. Or you can just give him the Chandler fight if that thing is still viable at that point, you know. Oops. Let's do this one. Hey, Luke, after this latest loss to Merab, do you have any interest in Corey at featherweight? Personally, he is one of my favorite fighters, but outside of the O'Malley fight, I don't see many compelling matchups for him at 35. Plus, with his height and reach, I feel he could fit in well at the weight. If he was able to spend 6 or so months putting on good muscle, similar to how Max did prior to moving to 55 versus Gaethje, I would tell you I wouldn't rule it out. Obviously, I've interviewed Corey in person. So I have a sense of his size or as a good bantamweight or small featherweight. I don't think he is incapable of going to 45. I don't know if that's the best idea. It could be done. I agree that by far the O'Malley fight is the biggest one, but I think that someone is they all want to be the guy to not just be champion. They want to be the guy to beat Merab, and especially the ones who lost previously. Like that's the goal. The goal is to become champion. ... by beating the guy specifically who beat Merab. I mean, if Merab wins at 323, and again, he might already be it, but let's just for the sake of argument, he wins at 323 in devastating fashion. So now he is unequivocally the best bantamweight of all time. Somebody wants to beat that guy. They want you want to be the guy to take that from him because it would be monumental. Especially again, as I indicated, after he lost. I think he could go to 45. I don't think that's crazy. Eventually, his best career prospects will take him one way or the other. But I don't know if he needs to rush that. And in fact, if there aren't super compelling matchups, and Merab keeps defending his title, it might in fact hasten getting back up there. Or it's possible Merab decides eventually to move up in weight and drops the belt, in which case kind of hovering near the close to that top is going to make it much more likely that you're going to be back in the title picture. So, moving to a new weight class is a little bit of reinvention, and sometimes that's just what the doctor ordered. Probably wise for Corey to keep his options open, but it's not necessary. Who would you have favored if Merab and Aljo were to have ever fought? I feel Merab had more output, but Sterling did have decent cardio plus size advantage and is a good grappler. But Merab has shown to be better with his hands, as we say, with him stunning Umar and Corey on the feet. I mean, that's an interesting one, right? Because Aljamain, I mean, the fact that they've trained so much together makes the question a little much more difficult to actually answer. But I think I would say the level of grappling finesse and submission threat that Aljamain has is much higher. However, that may not be enough. And Merab's finesse is improving, and certainly his output is the best in history. I mean, I would just say this version of Merab, I think, is real tough to beat. This version. If they fought today, I would pick this version of Merab. If it was even like a year or two ago, I'm not so sure if I feel the same. Yeah. I think at this point I would go with Merab, but certainly some of the attributes of Aljamain Sterling. Again, dude, you keep hearing me say it. All these guys who can find the back. The ability to find the back in MMA, to regularly find the back, whether it's Usman Nurmagomedov, whether it's Charles Oliveira, whether it's Aljamain Sterling, you can see how consistently I go to this because it's such an advantageous skill to not only be able to find the back regularly, but to be able to maintain it. Now, Usman struggles there relative to like Aljamain or something like that. But in general, you understand what I'm saying to you. The ability to capture the back and maintain it confers so many insane level benefits. And I'm sure you already intuitively understand that. But like, you're just going to have guys who might have deficiencies in like very obvious places. But if they have the ability to capture the back, it sends their stock to the moon because that's such an important skill to have. Yeah, this is a tough one. Alex Pereira or Daniel Cormier? Who has the better light heavyweight championship? Alex beat former champions, and strength of competition as champion. Strength of competition as champion has to count. I'm not sure who. Dude, Donkalaev, man, what the fuck? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I'm sentimental about DC. Let's pull up his run, shall we? Let's pull up. Um, let's pull up his run and take a look at it. Oops. I'm sentimental to DC, but I'm recognizing that increasingly that's becoming a difficult argument to make with everything that Poatan is doing. All right, so at light heavyweight, I mean it's pretty fucking good, right? So at light heavyweight, he beat Patrick Cummings at UFC 170. Dan Henderson, he beat the fuck out of Dan Henderson. Then he loses to John Jones in January of 2015. He then beats Anthony Johnson, which was a tough assignment. Then Gustafsson in a super gritty, difficult fight. Then Anderson Silva, late notice, was supposed to be John Jones. He fucked everything up. And then Anthony Johnson again in 2017, then lost to Jones in 2017, then beat Volkan Oezdemir. All right, now let's compare that to Alex Pereira. All right, his light heavyweight run. Let's see. His light heavyweight run is Jan Blachowicz, former champion, Yuri, former champion, Jamal, former champion, Yuri again, Khalil. Then he lost to Ankalaev, and then he beat Ankalaev, and then obviously like tremendously so. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4 champions that he beat. Right now, 2 of those are rematches. So the Prochazka and the Ankalaev one. But this is what I mean, dude. This is why it's so fucking hard to compare resumes because he is just catching lightning in a bottle. But you can make an argument for Poatan given like what I just said, like how many former champions he's beaten. The thing is, it's like I just wonder that I have no way of proving this. It's just a feeling. You can dismiss it if you like. I would have loved to have seen Poatan fight the Gustafsson that gave Cormier the toughest fight of his. I mean, he's got losses, but the toughest win of his career. Because that Gustafsson was fleet of foot, great jab, well-rounded, could scramble, cardio, just had a lot to offer. And I really wonder what it might have looked like. Because that would have given me, obviously, if they had similar competition or the same competition, that would give you a great answer to the question. I think you can. I saw Cormier more thoroughly vetted, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Because Yuri is very good, but defensively quite vulnerable. Jamal, I think there's questions about like, where that ranks as like a. How do we grade the level of that championship run? Yan certainly kind of long in the tooth even by 2023. I think he was 39 at that point, maybe something like maybe 40 even. And then Ankalaev is a great win, especially the way that he got it. I mean, I realize there's some asterisks about it because of the injuries, but there's always asterisks about that, including the loss that he had to Ankalaev before that. You know, I still say DC, but I recognize you can make an argument for Poatan because he's just catching lightning in a bottle and then, again, making the absolute best of it. No question. Like, in other words, do I think that if DC had to fight Blachowicz, Prochazka, Jamal, Prochazka, Khalil, do I think he would have won all of those? I do. Ankalaev probably would have won that. He probably would have won that one too. Like, I think he would have won all those as well. But this is just an estimation. I have no way of proving this. Again, I think you can make an argument for either. If you want to make one for Alex, you could. It's just a little bit. The question is challenging because different things about them have been revealed through fire, and it wasn't necessarily the same kinds of fire, and that makes the comparison a little awkward. But the fact that we're even in a place where somebody could, I thought DC when he moved to heavyweight, I was like, oh, he'll be the consensus second greatest light heavyweight of all time for the rest of my life, and now that is certainly in question, right? If someone's asking an interesting question, if Merab doesn't have superhuman cardio, but rather just good cardio, how does his career trajectory change? Significantly. It would make a huge difference. He wouldn't be who he is. Significant. It's not that the only reason he wins is because of labor. It is that, on the contrary, the labor is the glue that binds all the pieces of his game together. And if you take away that glue, it just becomes a much different kind of threat. Dude, at this level of the game, small changes yield drastically different results. You tear your ACL and you have to get surgery. You miss a bunch of time and you come back and you're pretty athlete. You rehabbed it well. ACL injury rehab is as best as it's ever been, but you still lose a step. Certainly on another sport like the NFL, this would have a dramatic impact potentially on your career, right? You get Tommy John surgery on your arm as a baseball pitcher, granted that's a pretty invasive thing, but the point I'm trying to make is, even with surgery and coming back and everything else, you're just never really the same. And even if it's not that, even if you make a small change to the way you tactically fight a fight, or strategically, you have a new coach, he has a new way of making you approach a fight. This as well can have a drastic change on the fight itself. So if you're talking about someone who would have like really good cardio, but not like Merab's, he doesn't have 50 takedowns attempted on Yan. He doesn't do that. He doesn't take the kinds of risks that he has. He doesn't have the same pep in his step. He doesn't offer the same body language to a tired opponent. He doesn't have the same resiliency to go for things. It would have a enormous impact. So he might be good and maybe he would have even become champion, but he wouldn't be this. What are your thoughts regarding the fact that Brazil, doesn't have loyal and passionate fans, but they have tasteless fans? Imagine if Americans yelled, "You will die" at people. You seem to hate on America. Oh, okay. And nowhere else, but America is the only country where the people are fans of fighters, not their country of origin. Guys, did you hear that? America is the only America. Can you believe the shit that people write me? America is the only country where the people are fans of fighters, not their country of origin. Are you out of your fucking mind? You think that's true for 2 fucking seconds? Yes, hometown crowds are going to, generally speaking, favor hometown fighters. The notion that, quote, America is the only country where the people are fans of fighters, not their country of origin, is, so fucking false, I barely even know where to begin. Also, again, when you have witnessed Trevor Prangley fighting Yuki Kondo, and then the crowd is chanting USA, but neither of the fighters are from the USA, but one is a white South African, it tends to inform your judgment about some of these things. More to the point, I seem to hate on America. No, I just don't have any desire for forced patriotism at sporting events. I realize it is a part of it these days. They're doing flyovers with stealth bombers at boxing events. They do the national anthem, not just the USA one. Whoever is, like, you know, Benny Pacquiao is doing it. They do the Philippines or something too. But, you know, I don't need any of that shit. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't like, oh, let's honor the veterans at the Nationals game. Whenever they do this, I go with a buddy of mine. He was in the Army. He's like one of my best friends. We went to a game. It was actually the last time we went was the Shohei Ohtani game. And I was like, if you're a veteran in the crowd, stand up. Me and him don't fucking stand. We're not like, I'm there to watch goddamn baseball. I'm not there to, you know, do this. And if fans want to cheer for people from the USA, I don't mind that. What really pissed me off was when Fariz, what's his name? Yusuf Zalal, excuse me, was getting booed even after he won, you know, and he's like, okay, you want to boo him on the walkout, fine, but you're booing him even after he wins. And he's like, yo, thanks to everybody who came here. I'm so happy. It's like, dude, it's just that is tasteless to me. But okay, who gives a shit? If you want to cheer for the American guy, knock yourself out. People will do it. What do I think about it? About the Brazilians doing it? I kind of hate it, but it does, like, I don't know what the remedy is. Like, what are we supposed to do? Like, argue with them? Like, oh, you guys should be fans of things in ways that are more welcoming beyond the grasp of, you know, the way that you are. I think that'd be cool. How the fuck do we get them there? I have no idea. I have no idea how to argue with people in Brazil being like, hey, I know this guy is, you know, he's not Brazilian, but you should like him. If you have any ideas on how to achieve such an end, I'm all ears. I don't know what the fuck that would even be. So do I like it? No. I find it a little annoying, to be honest with you, that they're just basically raw nationalists in that way. However, I have no idea what, like, you know, okay, what am I supposed to do with that information? I don't like the way that they cheer for or cheer against anyway, or however you want to do. We could both really. Well, no, I don't care that they cheer for the Brazilian guy, but that they only seem to cheer for the Brazilian guy. I don't. What is the remedy for that? And it just seems like on some level you have to kind of, at least for a foreign country, accept it. But here in the United States, I mean, I'm a little person. I have no real ability to change the way in which people interface with sports, but it is my country. I speak the language. I know the customs. I'm going to say what the fuck I feel. I don't need patriotism or shows of it at a baseball game. If you feel the need to scratch your patriotic itch, volunteer to help your country in some kind of a way. Volunteer for a civic organization, join the military, or don't. Pick up trash in your neighborhood, vote, go to local city council meetings, go to school board meetings, like, be involved in ways that matter. And if you want to hang an American flag outside of your house, by all means do it. And you want to cheer for the American guy, by all means do it. But, like, I know it's being lost on this generation of Americans that the point of being American is that you have the freedom to be like, I don't want to do any of that shit, or I do want to do all that shit. And you can pick it. This kind of enforced orthodoxy where we now have to, like, oh, no, you no longer have the choice. Now it's bad if you're not openly patriotic. Fuck off. Fuck off. No one is going to make me be openly patriotic at a fucking baseball game. I have served in a very minimal capacity, but I have served. I don't have to get that itch scratched. I'm there to watch the fucking Nationals lose to Shohei Ohtani. That's what I'm there to do. If you have a need that you want to fulfill as a fan or as a person, I encourage you to do it, but you don't have a right to say fuck else to anybody else in this country when we celebrate, or don't, in our own particular way around sports. Do I wish it was different in Brazil? Sure. If you want to talk to them about it, maybe you can convince them to have a different attitude. I welcome it. I don't know why the fuck it is the way that it is, but it is. Does Dana's open reluctance to let Pereira move to heavyweight come from openly not wanting to create truly big stars, as they don't need them anymore? They don't want another Conor to deal with, be entertaining but not over the top. They already have this. Pereira had a big speech about heavyweight and Jones prepared, but went respectful with Arthur. Classy, I agree, but a missed promotional opportunity to start the public heavyweight move conversation. I actually don't agree with that. I actually feel like he did do the classy thing. And I mean, John's brother I think, what was it, like a day before, 2 days before, something, a very small timeline had just passed. It was very classy to not do that, but it certainly planted seeds, did it not? It planted seeds about the White House card. He's done subsequent interviews about it. Like, it actually has begun to do that. I mean, I think in part they want the Poatan experience to be, they Tom Dana has a reluctance for guys to do it because it just gums up the works, right? Where I don't think he really believes that Poatan can have like amazing success at heavyweight. I think that's probably part of it. Again, any kind of opportunity you get to have a big name opponent or a move up in weight class, these are functions of how the UFC perceives you. The UFC has to perceive you as somebody that they want to give these opportunities to. Now, of course, Poatan has earned a lot, but he's also asking a lot. He's asking to go and maybe get a title in a third weight class. Not against John, not so much, but if he beat John, it would do that. Super fight. And he wants to get paid for it in this particular case. So, I understand it. But I just feel like every time a guy moves up a weight class and loses or, leaves their own weight class and has to abandon the title, it just creates more problems. They keep doing it because certain situations are unavoidable in that regard. Guys like Islam, guys like Ilya. But if they can avoid it, I think that they want to. But dude, they've already got a situation like this, like, oh, they don't want to build him up because he'd be too big if he did that. Frankly, I think he's got a long way to go before we're even talking about somebody who could even sell 1 million on pay-per-view, much less what Conor was doing, at his peak. We're not even like, I mean, dude, has Poatan ever sold 500,000 on his own? I doubt it. I'm certain a 750K on his own. I doubt that. I really, really doubt that. And it maybe at 300 that they got pretty close to that, but that also had a pretty significant supporting cast and was, a unique event in certain ways on the calendar. There are almost no American stars in boxing on pay-per-view. There are almost no American stars, period, in MMA who can sell on pay-per-view. They're already there. They're already there. They don't need, I guess keeping a lid on things would be important, but they don't need to do much to get to a situation where the fighters have such a minimal financial footprint that they can, yes, they're important and they can leverage that to some degree, but not, again, when Conor beat Eddie, he was asking for shares in the company. We're long past that. Tuki just came home. God help us. Godzilla might start banging on Tokyo's door here. All right. Okay, good question here. All right, hey, Luke. During the UFC 320 watch-along, you mentioned that you don't look forward to the brain damage Yuri and Khalil are going to face when they were slugging. 30 seconds later, Yuri KOs Khalil, and you lost your shit and seemed hyped. I'm not trying to corner you here, as I'm pretty much in the same boat. But how do you juggle your passion for combat sports while also being aware that the fight... Oh, Jesus, there's more to this. Hang on. Excuse me. Here we go. Being aware that the fighters are basically killing themselves for our entertainment. I used to tell myself that they are passionate about it, and this is a choice they made, but the truth is that most of these people are in bad situations to begin with, and fighting is a way out of it. Given better initial circumstances, they might not have ended up fighting. Given that we are seeing more and more the repercussions of fighting, like with the likes of BJ Penn or Vanderlei Silva, it makes it harder for me to ignore this, and I feel a bit hypocritical getting hyped when seeing a KO live. And on top of that, a lot of those fighters end their careers with almost nothing to show for it. I'd just like to know what's your take on this, as I'm sure you've thought about it a lot, endlessly. Thanks for your content. Always a great watch. Thank you so much for watching. There is no way to reconcile this. If you were interested in like, hey, I train personally I'll make something up. If you train recreationally, and you have friends compete on like an amateur or low-level pro thing, and it's not their life, but it's something that they really commit themselves to and they get really good at. And yes, injuries happen with that. Injuries happen in training. They might get KO'd in a fight. They might deliver a KO, but it doesn't mark a huge amount of their life. They're giving up something as a result of it. But like the trade-off seems worth it because it's not how they pay their bills. It's not their future and blah, 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 right? Like you can, and it's not altogether, they might have a handful of fights and then call it a day, I see that all the time. If you go to regional MMA, you see this kind of thing all the time. I don't really have an issue with that. I think you can do that pretty consistently because you're very much putting a lid on the amount of damage and the kinds of sort of destitute circumstances that you find yourself in a situation like that. But what you're talking about is like very, very different, which is these guys who are getting viciously KO'd multiple times to say nothing of what is happening in training. And they may not make a lot of money, or they make some, but, you know, for whatever reason, by hook or by crook, they end up, you know, in circumstances where they have to get back out there late in life and blah, blah, blah. I don't think you can reconcile it. I think I have, when it comes to that, like a gnawing conscience that I have a compartmentalized identity, and that is how I make it through the day. I don't know how else to say it. It's a problem because by the time, even as a fan, by the time it really begins to dawn on you the cost that is befalling these fighters, you already fell in love with the fight game. You were already committed. And then you begin to see some of the darker corners. This is why it's so funny to me, like newer fans being, you know, accusing older fans of being jaundiced. It's like, brother, you just haven't made enough turns of the screw yet. Just wait. You stick around long. There's no way to stick around in fighting long enough to not, like, the longer you're here, you're gonna see fucked up medical shit. Like it's an absolute certainty. And then you have to decide how you feel about it. And some people want to profit off of it. Some people want nothing to do with it. And then there's a lot of people in the complicated middle who are just like you, like me. I'm sure like many of you watching who are like, you know, I love this sport. The fighters themselves, in many cases, seem to adore it as well. Dude, for me, it's been the defining fact of the last 20 years of my life, literally. But at the same time, dude, this is a fucked up industry, deeply exploitative and about to get much, much worse. The guys who were heroes of my initial foray into my career, anyway, less so my fandom, but my career, they are now having to get, the state is interested in potentially committing them because they've lost their mind, or, you know, they're putting up GoFundMe's to get medical bills paid, or, you know, you name it. And now all of that like romanticism that you held in such high regard now just comes crashing to the ground. And the people at the time who you were celebrating that with, many of them are gone. They're not even aware of it, but you're stuck here and you're seeing this shit. You know, I mean, I would imagine, how many of the people who watched in person Chuck Liddell versus Vanderlei Silva, how many of those people still watch MMA today? I would imagine it's 1%. You know, very, very few. And yet, for those of us who are sticking around, you now see this shit. I don't know how you can reconcile them. The only thing that I can ever try to do is try to advocate for fairness in the industry, to try to use the position that I have as, you know, I don't know what the word would be, as helpful as possible. As, you know, I don't know what the word would be, but to call out abuses in the industry as best I can in favor of the people who have the most skin in the game and who are taking the brunt, I mean, not the brunt, the totality of the damage. And this, I mean, this is why it's, you know, this is to me, like, again, I'm not going to deal with it. I mean, you know, we've been over this a million times, so I'm not going to say the whole part, but just the tiny little piece of, like, this is why the fighter pay issue matters, dude. It doesn't matter so much in BJ Penn's case. It's not going to be a universally applied thing. He comes from a family of wealth. The issue is a little bit different in his case. But in many, like nearly all of these cases, money is some kind of component in either driving a return to action, delaying retirement, you know, you name it. And I don't know how you can't talk about these issues without making like a stink about what pay is, and not just pay, but like how power is shared in the industry and how power is shared in boxing. I mean, because they have a lot of problems too, even though those guys make a lot more money. Like, it doesn't solve the problem by itself. It certainly makes a difference, but you get the idea. Although that's a sport where there's so much brain damage relative to MMA. Even there's data to bear that out. I think you have to live a little bit of a contradiction, unfortunately, and it eats at me. Good question. We've kind of been over it, but it's a good one just the same. If Merab beats Yan in December, is this the single greatest year for a fighter in UFC history? He would have beaten Umar, O'Malley, Corey, and Yan, all very close to their respective primes. Yeah, we're at that place. So if let's look at John Jones's 2021, right, which was an exceptionally good year for him. Oh, for fuck's sake. Am I here? Let me look it on this phone. John Jones. Okay. So John Jones in 2011, which is widely considered to be one of the best years for a UFC fighter ever. All right. In that year, he beats and submits Ryan Bader. In the second round, he takes the title off Shogun in the third round. He defends his title against Quentin Jackson. I was there at the Pepsi Center. He submits him in September of that year, and then he stops Lyoto in December of that year. So he won all four of them. Submission via guillotine choke, TKO. He just bodied Shogun. Submission via rear naked choke, submission via guillotine choke, and then slumped him to the mat. That's going to be tough to beat. I mean, you can say that the quality of opposition that Merab has is higher, but he's got fewer finishes. Now, if he goes in there and he beats Yan, it's something of a different conversation. Shogun's 2005. Here we go. His 2005 tournament run was, ready for this? He beats Hiromitsu Kanehara. You won't know who that is, but it's a decent name. In Pride 29. TKO in the first round via stomp. Then he beats Rampage via soccer kick in the first round in April. Then he beats Little Nog, who was a very good fighter at that time, in June of 2005. And then he beats, on the same night, he beats Alistair Overeem and Ricardo Arona. So he's playing with a different kind of rule set where, and by the way, how did he beat Arona? He TKO'd him. And how did he beat Overeem? He TKO'd him, both in the first round, although the Overeem one was in the 6:42 mark of the first round. So remember, Pride had 10-minute first rounds. But okay, dude, that's a level. I mean, that's an absurd level of achievement. That's outrageous achievement. What I'm going to say is, pound for pound, the kind of fighter that Merab is beating, I think, is a little higher quality, especially when you have like the Hiromitsu Kaneharas of the world. And even at 205, you can say, oh, John was beat. How old were these guys? Let me look at something here. John Jones. How old were John's opponents when he fought them? So let's see here. When he beat Ryan Bader was 27 years old. When he beat Shogun, people are like, oh, Shogun was washed. He had the fucking belt. How washed could he have fucking been? Shogun was, 29 years of age. Yeah, give me a break. He was washed. I have hated that argument for so long. Rampage was 33 years, so a little bit post-prime, or certainly at the tail end of it. And Lyoto was 33 years, so somewhere around there. And John finished them all. I still might lean on John, but Merab's doing pretty impressive shit. Let's go to this one. Luke, I heard on Ariel's show that Matchroom and PFL's TV rights were up in 2026. Eddie Hearn was also on Ariel's show and mentioned he considers getting into MMA. Yeah, fucking right. Would it be possible to see a scenario where those two link up or join the same broadcaster at a minimum? Or do you think that would be a positive for the state of MMA? I mean, I don't see a world. If DAZN is owned, or I should say, if DAZN is in part owned by Turkey and Turkey has any kind of controlling share, there's no way they pick up PFL. Like, UFC is going to want to see them out of business, or at a bare minimum, not going to give them space to accommodate them. So I would just believe that Turkey would block. Again, I don't know if Turkey would do this. I'm going to guess based on how the industry works and what I've seen over the years and what I've seen more recently. My guess is that if PFL wanted to sign with DAZN, I don't think that they would, but even if DAZN would want them, but even if they did, I suspect Turkey would block it. Yeah. Turkey blocks more things than you might be aware of. Keep that in mind. A lot of shit goes unreported. Luke, who would you personally like to see for Ilya's next defense, Justin or Paddy? This person writes, I'd like to see Justin versus Paddy next, but obviously you can't do that. Unless Arman gets a first round quick sub or KO versus Hooker, maybe they can have him do a quick turnaround, but probably unlikely. Just reading the tea leaves, can't go wrong in either case if you're UFC and Paramount, because you're going to have Ilya, one of the brightest stars in the sport, in a title defense. That by itself is going to be worth it to them. Justin Gaethje, well known to fans. Slugger. I think that's probably the direction they're going to go. Paddy is a grudge match. I mean, what's not to love? Again, it's a title defense. I just think that for a Paramount card, I don't think that the opening on the Paramount card, the numbered cards, they're gonna want to give probably a little bit of that hometown cooking in the sense of like the judges would be on their side. But I mean, putting Americans on a card, I think is probably what they're gonna do. So yeah, I suspect that it's gonna be for that reason, Justin. It does leave an interesting place for Paddy, but something to figure out later on in life. Okay, let's get to this one. Interesting question. All right, Luke, to me, it feels like booking Pereira versus Jones for the White House card, assuming Aspinall is still champ, is a disaster for the heavyweight division. Neither has expressed any interest in fighting Tom for the title, so he'll be stuck fighting the Volkovs and Almeidas of the world, while the world will see Poatan and Jones as the marquee heavyweight matchup. How does the UFC avoiding diminishing the heavyweight title if they book that fight for the whole White House card? That's a great point, actually. Yeah, this probably might be one of the reasons why they have skipped it, is that, yes, that might be a bit of a sugar high and a fix that fans would be attracted to, but it further erodes because you can't make them fight. You can't make the winner fight Tom. You can't actually make them. They can just retire. They can give up the belt. You saw that. They can just say no. So there's no mechanism to force it. And if there's no mechanism to force it, you're now playing with fire even more, where Tom gets left at the altar again. In the scenario you're positing, Tom gets left at the altar again. And now where are you? You're in a tough ass spot. That's a good point. That's a good point. I think there might be other reasons too with the chaos that it leaves in the divisions when you move around like that, but that's a good point you're making. Let's see. Oh, it's a good one. Hang on. Let's do this one. I don't feel like enough people are talking about this, but what if Jones did all that work to duck Aspinall only to get viciously KO'd by a guy who everyone thinks he is just going to run over in Pereira? Don't you think people need to take this possibility a little more seriously? This would be a death blow to John's ego, don't you think? Yeah. I mean, I think any loss by John would be a disaster for him. And again, I'm trying to make these comments not in light of the personal tragedy and the family tragedy that they're going through. I'm just trying to make a sporting argument based on what I've seen. Based on comments that he's made, it seems like winning is a precondition to his own sense of self and, frankly, like security. I think any kind of loss would be devastating. But to the point you raise, if you duck a guy and then you fight the guy who you were ducking the other guy for, and then that blows up in your face, it's like a double whammy at that point. Not only do you lose, but now you didn't get the first one. It's triple whammy because you didn't get the payday and you lose. And now you lost to the guy that you were cherry picking against. Yeah, I mean, that would be I mean, here's the thing though. Look, if he this is why the Aspinall fight's a bit of a get. I mean, it's still easy for me to say, but if he had fought Aspinall for 30 mil, right? Because the Saudis are chipping in, and you lose, you can at least still make a generational argument. It's like, well, Tom's younger, John's older. This is John's second weight class, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's ways to be like, and listen, he gets rich in the end. Father Time is undefeated. But then if you avoid that, and then you go to a one, you're like, okay, well, some of those, I mean, yes, he's still old, and none of those considerations change, but Poatan's also old. Poatan's older than Aspinall, I think by 5 or 6 years, maybe more than that, as a matter of fact. And you lose to that guy. Not only does it like absolutely drive home the ducking in the most aggressive of ways, but then the folly of it all. Oh, dude, I would genuinely be concerned for his mental health in a situation. I'm not even doing a bit. I'd be concerned for his mental health in a situation like that. That would be potentially cataclysmic. So I saw this one too. Mikey Musumeci mentioned on Ariel's show that he's become a free agent, or excuse me, that he becomes a free agent in a few days. Is this a bad sign for UFC BJJ? The product is good, but it seems if the UFC hasn't re-signed the face of the promotion, I feel like this could indicate that they are trying to get out. On a semi-related note, what are your thoughts on the possible view buying scandal? Did you guys see this? If the UFC is purchasing bot views for UFC BJJ, does this possibly indicate that they buy bot followers to inflate stars that they are trying to push? Guys, UFC has, or I should say, I need to be careful about this. I need to double check this, and I will. I'll double check this. I believe that the UFC has been uncovered in various very small scale stuff, and this is like 10, 15 years ago, but like astroturfing, positive comments for this, and making accounts to say certain things on online spaces, right? Astroturfing. Now I need to double check that. I need to be specific about where it was. I gotta remember. I forgot exactly what this was. But the point I'm trying to make is it would not in any way surprise me if they were. I mean, buying bots is a thing. If you've got money to do, and you can just got money to burn. I mean, I realize that it can fuck up your algorithm long term to do stuff like that, but UFC's algorithm is probably on their YouTube channel pretty fucking secure, and who knows why they might be doing that? Could they be coming up for negotiations and they want to, have a face for the product by having an inflated numbers? That's possible. But if you look at the video, guys, at the time it had 9 million. It had like 300 comments, and it had like a very low engagement rate and a small amount of likes. Like videos that I put out that have 30,000 views, like a tiny fraction will get sometimes more comments than that and higher engagement rates than that. So it's just like it's extremely unusual to have a videos with like these other markers of engagement and then have this massively outsized number. It certainly at a bare minimum, it raises questions. You know what? Hold on. Oh, yes, here it is. Here we go. They astroturfed on the Rio Rancho. On the UFC Rio Rancho card. Yeah. All right. I have to find exactly where it was, but where was this? Here we no, this one doesn't have it either. All right, I'll find it. But anyway, what does it say about UFC BJJ? I don't know, dude. I don't know. Like, it didn't really get out of first gear. It does have some promising elements. I mean, it's not like UFC is in any way cash strapped to like kind of prop up a fledgling operation that doesn't yet yield grand returns. Maybe they want to focus on other things. Maybe they want to focus now on boxing, now that is a going thing, right? Maybe they want to do that. I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I guess we'll have to see. I don't think UFC BJJ was like an instant success. I do think it's got elements that are quite good. You know, I do think there's parts of it that are fun. It's not an all or nothing proposition, but it wasn't exactly like a home run out of the gate. So it's just very. I can't at this stage like tell you what the UFC's institutional priorities are. But I guess one thing you should consider is in a world where now boxing is going to take up a significant greater amount of bandwidth within the broader TKO properties, to what extent does that dilute their commitment to something like UFC BJJ, which, maybe they kick the tires on. They're like, hey, let's see what we can get out of this. Especially if, I mean, maybe the whole thing was just a fuck with Craig, who knows? That wouldn't surprise me either. But we have to wait and see on that one. We have to wait and see. All right. Let's do this. We got to thank our friends. We have to thank our friends at Tooletries. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all know the score. Tooletries, LT20 for 20% off at tooletries.com. Site-wide, you can go to TOOLETRIES.com. Boys, men, ladies, if you're watching, for the men in your life, I want you to understand that I can only, in good conscience, on this channel, put forth products that I use personally and that I believe in. And this is that company, and this is their gear. So you can get all kinds of stuff. These are not the only things you can get. As you can see here, they make the best kind of grooming equipment that money can buy. Certainly the kind that a good working or middle class salary can afford, that just absolutely works, is bang for your buck, high quality materials that do what they say they're going to do. That is what I cannot overstate this enough. Again, I use these products on a literal daily basis, and it's because what they say is true, right? So if you're looking for a nose and ear hair trimmer, the Ranger has you covered. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more for, all the other regions and the body hair, they've got this. But that's not all that they have. Of course, no. As I've explained many times, they also have these. These are their scrubbers. They've got hook openings here that you can slide for your shower caddy, or you can hang it, from here, either one. This one is for the beard. All you donks taking your fingernails and doing this crap, you're not cleaning your face correctly. You're absolutely not cleaning your face and beard correctly. You need a utensil like this that gets deep and exfoliates and pulls out all of the stuff that needs to get pulled. Same thing for your scalp. It's the same thing that you can use. And of course, they have body scrubbers as well. It's not just hair that they do. I have my body scrubber down here. I'm not going to reach for it, but you get the idea. It's good equipment. It's equipment that works. And in the case of any of the trimmers, they're USB-C rechargeable. They work in water. They have LED lights on them. They don't snag and pull on your skin. Everything gets treated the right way. This is what I mean. Quality products at an affordable price, things you can use, things that have value, and I'm going to give it to you for 20% off. All you have to do is use my code LT20, LT20 for 20% off site-wide at Tooletries. Go to tooletries.com. Tell them LT sent you. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, and we'll get to the paid questions here, as I said before, they take good care of me, and I'm promoting them because A, I'm a customer, and B, because I believe in it, and I think you guys will get a great deal from it. There's nothing like taking some, it doesn't have to do with the world, but taking a little bit of pride in your appearance and paying not most insane dollars. In fact, I'm giving you a 20% off, but putting your hard-earned money towards something that actually works, something that is designed in mind for your needs and will last you a good long while. You can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong with Tooletries. TOOLETRIES.com, site-wide. All of it's on for sale using my code LT20 for 20% off. All right. Big thanks to our friends at Tooletries. All right. Let me get a sip of this drink. Let's get to the paid questions and see what you got here. Max says, Luke, was it just me or did Oliveira's ground game look even better than usual? I wasn't sure if that was possible. His takedown entries, oh, look at that. His takedown entries spelled wrong, seem to be improved massively. How big of a shot does he have versus Max? I think he has a real shot versus Max. I agree. Again, they're both weathered. They've both been put out by the same guy, right? But if you look at how skillful they were even just 3-4 years ago and compare that to, well, maybe not, that's a little different, but like 5 years ago, certainly, they're just much more skilled now. They're much better fighters now. And I think that is so exciting. I agree with you. I think Oliveira, he's only got, well, that's not one gear. That's not quite true. He's only got one kind of orientation to just like go forward. But he's got such a unique ability to leverage it. And he has such exciting dynamic offense in ways that a previous question had indicated, but we've never really seen Max answer for some of those things. I can't wait. I hope they make that fight tomorrow. Fred, which is better, Merab's 2025 so far, so no Yan rematch, or Shogun's 2025 or 2005, excuse me? And if Shogun, would the Yan win be enough for Merab's year to overtake it? Again, Shogun had 5 wins that year, as we indicated, against some big name. Dude, if you don't know who Ricardo Arona was, he was maybe the top guy in the world at that time, if not named Shogun. And then he beat Overeem, and he beat Rampage, and he beat Little Nog. No, I mean that's a pretty fucking good year. I wouldn't say Yan yet, no. Or sorry, Merab yet. Now, Merab goes in there and gives him the business. We can talk about it. Thoughts on Obama's interview with Mark Maron? Didn't see it. I hate the feeling that this is just chess to them. These are our lives, for fuck's sake. Didn't see it. Didn't see it. I like Mark Maron a lot. He ended his podcast. I admire everything he built, but I don't have any desire, like what Obama thinks is just, I mean, I could not imagine something less important to me right now. UFC's Canada main card is low-key decent. Yes, it is. I agree. Personally, I think they're throwing the Canadians, Mike, Jasmine, and Iman, to the Wolves with whom they're facing. Think any of them could pull out the win. So Mike Malott is fighting Kevin Holland. Mike Malott is fighting Kevin Holland. Jasmine Jasdavicius is fighting Manon Fiorot. That's a big one because that's Manon's first fight since losing to Shevchenko. And then Ayman Zahabi fighting Chito Vera, right? I believe that's correct. So those are great fights. They're all tough ones. But dude, Jasmine has certainly earned a top fight. I think Ayman has certainly earned the opportunity to face somebody good. You could argue a little bit about the necessity of Kevin Holland versus Mike Malott, but Holland likes to stay busy. I think Malott still has something to prove. I don't hate the fight at all. Could be fun. Could be a fun one. Rundum Cheek says, odds Gane will at least attempt to sit for a leg lock against Tom. I'm going to put it at 90%. Also on an early prediction for who is taking home gold at the AVNs this year. I won't be watching. I can't believe, like, even in that Volkov, the last Volkov fight, this was the rematch, right? I thought Gane's grappling was atrocious in that. Like, his decisions were... It's like, dude, how are you still making decisions that I've told you guys this story a million times. Like, as a white belt, this is like 2004 or 5 or something. We're talking 20 years ago. I had an instructor be like, stop doing that shit, like where you're sitting for leg locks rather than just learning how to pass and pin, And again, some people can do that when they're really good at everything. Like Oliveira could do something like that, but you got to get to a different level of the game for that to even be a relevant question. And he's just making these fucking terrible choices. And you're just like, dude, what on earth is happening? If what would be the reason that would change if you're doing it that late into your career? Now, maybe Tom won't give him the chance. I don't know. But I think if Gane has an opportunity to do something like that from a similar situation, he'll take it. I just don't trust him. He can be dangerous, of course, but like I just don't trust his grappling. I don't trust his decision making in the grappling department. I just think he makes bad choices a lot more than I once realized, you know. Here we go. Finally. Thank you. I'm so glad somebody asked about this. All right, thoughts on the California State Athletic Commission meeting. Did you guys watch this, or did you hear about this, or did you read about it? You might be asking, what on earth was the point of yesterday? Like, why should I care? Let me explain to you in the simplest terms what is happening here. Okay. The most important state regulatory body in the country, you could make an argument it's Nevada, but certainly the one with the largest commission that has the largest volume of fights to monitor, right, is going to be California. So in many ways, they're the most important one. The most important and certainly the largest in terms of their oversight, athletic commission in the United States is helping manufacture consent to change federal laws that will enable a single firm to dominate and monopolize the market. Right? That's what's happening here. They're manufacturing consent. If you've never heard that term before, you might be asking, what exactly does that mean? It's actually a book by two guys. One of them is famously known as Noam Chomsky, who is technically a linguist, but a political commentator, or he's an academic, an old academic now. But essentially what they argue, or at least as I should say, let's skip that, but how it pertains to today is that when you have this kabuki theater taking place, what the point of it is for this agency to use their standing in the regulatory environment to lend credibility to this piece of legislation, which is designed to enrich and enable a single, I mean, there might be some other UBOs that happen along the way, but the legislation is clearly written by lobbyists designed to enrich a single firm. It's so that when they go to these congressional hearings, and then when they make the case more broadly on the House floor, or potentially even to media opportunities, they can say, hey, look, Muhammad Ali's wife signed off on this. Even though she has, if you've never looked at the history of how she's treated Muhammad Ali's estate, it would shock you. The largest athletic commission in the country unanimously endorsed all of this, right? They're using their imprimatur, they're using their credibility and their stature to then use that in the place where they need it the most, which is to get this legislation passed. And I would very much doubt that on an intellectual level, I mean, perhaps some believe what they were voting for, but I don't think that's what they were voting for, right? And they were voting simply to just recommend it, essentially. It's not an empty gesture, but not a binding one. And the reason why I think they're doing it is they're making a bet about where everything is headed. That's what I think. They're making a bet that we know that MMA events, at least in the United States, are shrinking year over year. It doesn't really have a pay-per-view star. Boxing, I don't know the number of boxing events, but certainly no one can look at the state of the sport and be like, it's in great shape. And they're making a read about who is in power, how much longer they're going to be in power. And if these people want to work in this industry, I think they are surmising to themselves, or surmising more broadly, and then saying to themselves, we need to get on board with the program if we wish to have any continued place in this industry once this inevitability eventually takes hold. So what we're going to do is, rather than trying to act as an independent regulatory body that really can kind of boss around the promotion, we are now going to be bossed around, and we're going to use the name and the imprimatur of the California State Athletic Commission to pass this affirmation of this legislation that destroys the Ali Act, essentially, and will help them have a dominant, potentially monopolizing presence in boxing. And what would that mean? I mean, think about it logically. If you're California and you fought this tooth and nail and you said, no, 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 we're going to not pass this unanimously, 6-0, legislation still might get passed, right? Even if you didn't pass it. And now you have to reckon with, they may not bring UFC to that state very often, if at all. TKO might not bring WWE there in any capacity, or, you know, any of their boxing events either. You know, the reality about this is the FTC investigated the UFC twice, once in 2012 and they closed in 2011, and then they closed the investigation in 2012, and then they closed another investigation in 2015. And Lena Khan, who ran it under Biden, who was, by the way, loved by the MAGA world, and I mean that sincerely, because she actually did the job of like antitrust. What she had noted was, from the Reagan years to the Bush years to the Clinton years, essentially into the Bush and then Obama years, there had been this reframing around the role of the FTC and kind of like taking a hands-off approach, even though under the letter of the law, they had all this authority to really engage with bad actors, or, you know, questionable actors at a bare minimum, who could be harming the consumer. And they just declined to do that. And I don't know if Lena Khan in a different world would have investigated them, but like, consider the implications now of the FTC not telling them to spin off the UFC parts of their business, taking them to court and making them spin off parts of their business. They now have grown into this entity where, number one, they're now a political force, and they helped put back in a candidate who literally tried to steal unambiguously with a fake elector scheme a presidential election. But putting that aside, they are so big and dominant in the industry that, can you imagine being California and then trying to regulate the sport, but you've now been deprived of the monopoly's business? You've been deprived of their boxing. You've been deprived of their MMA. You know, again, these are high profile events that bring in the vast majority of revenue. The argument used to be that California has such a volume of fights that they have to regulate that they have some kind of independence, like they could just live without it. And in a multipolar world, they don't need any one promoter. But in a unipolar world, that's a very different conversation. My view is they made a bet. They made a bet about how this is going to go and where they want to be to hold on to jobs in this industry once this full transformation takes place. Let it be known very clearly, between what the ABC did in selling out the athletes and now what the California State Athletic Commission does in selling out the athletes. The regulators, I've said this before, they absolutely don't care about the athletes. They can say whatever they want. I know California has passed a retirement fund. Awesome. Great. It doesn't mean anything if you don't practice what you claim to preach. And all of us are inconsistent. Me too. None of us have perfectly lived our values, but it seems like right now is a very consequential time. And right now, even if you've lived imperfectly with your values, raise your hand if you've done that. I've done that. But it seems like right now you are beginning to take a look at who really believes what they say they believe. Look around. Who is speaking out? Who is staying quiet? Who is saying, you know what, the job that I have, whether it's media, whether it's regulator, is to do this in protection of these interests, and I'm going to do that job for as long as I can. And who are the ones that are saying to themselves, this is going to turn this direction, I'm just going to get on board with it because I don't really give a fuck. You are watching them. They are declaring to you, not just the commissions involved and the regulators, all the folks in the industry. Watch what choice they make. It's the age of surrender, boys and girls. I've been trying to tell you. It's the age of surrender. I don't know if our politics are ever going to get back to a sane level, but what I can say and what I absolutely believe is the athletic commission model that we have now, like where all the states have their own athletic commission, there's no federal commission, that system needs to be scrapped. It has failed. It has failed. It is not a thing you can reform, because it turns out that when they are clearly the 800-pound gorilla in the room, they engage in their own sets of abuses, but okay, at least they bring the promotion to heel. But what we've now witnessed is, as these fight promotions, the special ones in this particular case, have grown to such a degree that no fight promotion has ever grown before, after the FTC whiffs on 2 fucking investigations of them. Great job, guys. By the way, both of those in the Obama years. Speaking of, I don't give a fuck what Obama has to say. Now look where we are. We are at the point where the commissions are clearly, their revenue model, yes, a lot of it is tax-based that they collect from the taxpayers in that state, but they also get a significant chunk of what they do from the events being in the state and then taking a percentage of them. That revenue model has fucked everything up, among other reasons. So, to have lived in this sport long enough to have watched regulators tuck tail and run at the sight of a monopolizing force, to the point where they are now helping to usher in what could be, for the rest of our lives, permanent changes to the sport to enrich a single dominant firm, to say that I have lost all confidence in them would be quite euphemistic. I have deep antipathy for them. I loathe them. When you needed them most, all that boasting about, this is what we stand for and this is what we believe in, and we have to protect the rights of this group and that, the athletes are, they don't fucking mean any of it. They don't mean any of it. They don't mean any of it. They are setting themselves up for when TKO finally takes over, that they're going to be sitting pretty with some kind of job, either currently in there, they won't lose the one they have, or they'll be set up for the next one, whatever that might be. And that's what you got. They held this event in October, I think it was September or October, where they held this public hearing, and it blew up in their face. So then they said they were going to have another one in December, but then they expedited it to October, or November, excuse me. Maybe it was December. And then they expedited it to October, and they claimed that they had this meeting with stakeholders, both for and against. They didn't say who they spoke to. They don't have any minutes of the meeting. They didn't make it public. You don't have any idea what materials were submitted, what the testimonies were, nothing. They give a brief summation of some of the arguments that were made by people who had concerns, but they don't, as Zach Arnold pointed out, they don't ever talk about the lawsuit that the UFC just settled this week, or the payments went out this week anyway. They don't make any mention of that. Dude, you're watching everybody who ever told you that X or Y matters to them. When it actually came time to show it, they folded. They folded. I have no faith at all whatsoever in the state athletic commission model. There might be individually some good state regulators out there. There might be some commissions that still do important work. And again, commissions, as a general observation, they fulfill an important function, which is regulating the space. I don't think that as an idea, that some entity still has to do that, but we have reached the end of what we know them to be. We have watched it. The model itself and how it's funded and how it's built doesn't work, and it especially doesn't work in a case where you have let a monopoly grow to such an extent that they're able to change federal legislation in ways that does not benefit the athlete and could potentially negatively impact the state that they're representing, because they could be deprived of the most important business that not one but 2 industries have to offer. I'm not sure if the commission has any relevant authority over WWE events as well. I believe they have some, and they might get some tax base from that. You know what I mean? You're pulling all of that away. How can one state stand up to that? It's a failure of regulators to ever do anything about it. And now look where we are. So, people might say, listen, they got to think about their careers and they got to think about their future. I suppose that's true. I suppose that's true. I suppose they do have to think about those things. But spare us the fucking rhetoric, yeah? Spare us the rhetoric about what you do. Spare us the rhetoric about what you care about. Spare us the rhetoric. Just take it all down. Please don't talk about it anymore. Dude, did you guys see John Wertheim? I guess there was some kind of scandal at the University of Iowa. No, Iowa. I'm sorry. There was some university where they fired the guy who ran the student newspaper, and it's a big scandal over there. And John Wertheim was tweeting like, "This is outrageous, and everyone should be concerned, left, right, and center." Motherfucker, you just turned in one of the most shameful ball washing PR jobs in the history of 60 Minutes, and you're out here on social media fucking feigning outrage over a student newspaper. Go fuck yourself, bro. Go fuck yourself. Someone clip this and fucking send it to him, please. Go fuck yourself, John. If you want to do the ball washing thing because it keeps you on TV, then do it. But then don't get out there and be like, well, this is a journalism scandal of the high. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. No one has even the slightest degree of interest in hearing that shit from you anymore. You decided how this was going to go. Live there. And it's the same thing here. All this fucking rhetoric about what these commissions are designed to do and whose interests do they serve. Do they look like they're serving the public's interest to you? I have lost complete and total faith in them. I have none left. I have nothing but antipathy left for them. There might be a couple of independent regulators here or there that are doing a great job. There could be some judges doing a great job, some referees trying their best. I get it. But the people who are powering the commission, if there was a vote of no confidence, I'd cast it immediately. So when this legislation comes up before Congress, assuming that they can get their shit squared away, I suspect that this will play a prominent role in how the legislation is talked about and presented at committee hearings. I suspect that you might hear from people from the commission, then testify before the Senate, or excuse me, the House hearings on this as well. Like they're manufacturing consent. So great use of our tax dollars, huh? What would be the funniest, easiest training camp? Funniest, easiest. Mine would be against Josh Emmett. I'd have 6 different sparring partners just spam overhand rights. He can wrestle too, actually, and he's got a good left hook. So yeah, you have to do a little bit more than that, but yeah. I don't know. Easiest training camp would be just the easiest fighter to beat. I was thinking recently about your ISP change has been nothing short of a disaster. Yes, it has been a fucking disaster. Curious what your takeaways have been from the entire saga. Also, what would be an MMA equivalent? I don't even know. Well, couple problems. I have a hard line that runs from here to out there. So I ran the hard line. I changed that hard line completely. That didn't fix the problem. So I changed a bunch of settings on my computer. That didn't fix the problem. Changed the router. That didn't fix the problem. And now it's only happening on this PC. So the PC is clearly now the issue because this is my laptop and you don't see it. The last thing I've been told is that it could be the network card. I've been told that there's a couple more settings I could change on the router potentially to make a difference. But I'm at the point now where the computer there's nothing left but computer repair. I've changed everything I could basically other than taking it into a shop. So, yeah. Who do you think are the top 5 pound for pound strikers in MMA? Put in order. I don't know about order. I mean, I would say Ilya, Poatan, not in order. Ilya, Poatan, maybe JDM. It's debatable. Maybe O'Malley. Let me think about that. At this stage, right? Um, Corey's up there, pure striker, right? I mean, dude, like Volk's got really good striking. I mean, he mixes it up, but he's got really good striking. Yair certainly on that list. I'm trying to think who else. I'm looking at this list here. Yan. I mean, again, I'd have to think about that a little more closely, but certainly Poatan, certainly Ilya, certainly you could put Max on that list as well to a degree potentially. I don't know if you could put Aspinall on there yet. I don't know if that works. You could put JDM potentially. Yeah, I mean, I would have to sort that out a little bit, but something like that. But again, you got some of these guys who are sub champion, who are still really good strikers, they'd also have to figure in as well. That's a tough. These questions like top 5 in order, they require a little bit more. For me, anyway, they require a little more thoughtful process. Yeah. Favorite UFC card from each decade. Mm. All right, from the 2000s, probably UFC 100. That was a great card. From the 2010s, that's a different one. 2010s. Probably UFC 205. And from the 2020s, maybe UFC 300. Right? Something like that. So 100, 205, 300. Maybe definitely 100, definitely 205. Wait, am I getting that right? Let me check that again. Yeah, so definitely 205. All right, so definitely that. Since 2020, I mean, it might be. Yeah, it might be that. Yeah. Highlander is the GOAT 80s movie. 80s movies. I mean, it's definitely not. Yeah, I got this already addressed. Thoughts on the growing skepticism from the young left of Graham Plattner possibly contracting for Blackwater and the fear he might be another Fetterman. I don't really buy it. I don't I mean Fetterman is unintelligibly left. I mean, he's left leaning, like truly in the way I describe it, nominally, like in name, but like essentially on all the things that matter the most: immigration, ICE enforcement, aid to Israel, you name it, like just general Trump skepticism that you would expect from the adversarial party. He's got none of it, zero. The notion that Plattner would be a repeat of that seems to me greatly overstated. Last week I asked if UFC 322 was the first time in history two title. Oh, good question. Moved up in weight in the same card. After looking into it, that seems to be true. With Brady versus Morales now added, how would you rate UFC 322? Let's look it up here so we can get a full look at the card. All right. So UFC 322, the full card is JDM versus Islam, Valentina Zhang as you mentioned, the two people moving up. Sean Brady, Michael Morales. That's a tough fight for Sean Brady and Morales too. Bo Nickel, Rodolfo Vieira, Leon Edwards, Carlos Praches. That's a good fight. Beneil Dariush, Benoit Saint Denis, another good one. Roman Kopylov taking on Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. Aaron Blanchfield rematching Tracy Cortez. Kyle Dawkins back against Gerald Mearshart. Angela Hill versus Fatima Klein. And then the guy who just signed up, Bisengar Susakayev, taking on Eric McConico. I don't know who he is. Also, Malcolm Wellmaker's on the card, but his opponent fell out. That's about an A or an A minus, man. That's a fucking amazing card. That is a very, 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 very good card. Cards don't come much better than that. Sean Brady versus Michael Morales seems like a lose-lose for Sean Brady. It's insane to me that UFC made that fight. If Sean squashes him, does he ever make it to a title shot? Yes. It's a tough fight for Sean because he's pretty close to a title shot. Hello, he just bodied a former champion. So you're thinking, all right, man, I'm pretty close to the title. But dude, I think they tried to get him Ian Gary and other fights and blah, blah, blah. And he couldn't get him. So he's just like, I can't stay inactive. I got to get out there and get something. And so he did. And that is a huge fucking risk. A huge risk. Because Michael Morales is very tough to take down. He's heavy-handed. He's getting better fight over fight. He's in that stage of his career where he's getting like noticeably better every time. Now, Sean Brady to me is really kind of peaking as well, but it's a tough fight. Morales is huge for the weight class. Sean Brady's strong, but I think stature-wise, he's going to have a little bit of a challenge there. But you have to admire his moxie. You have to admire his guts. If he gets the job done, he really sets himself apart. He's taking a fight under unenviable circumstances and is just trying to find a way through. To your point, is he risking it? Oh, brother. He is risking it heavy. Morales could derail everything. You were talking about Morales. Excuse me. Oh, you're saying if Sean squashes him. No. If Sean squashes him, I don't think Morales is out of a title shot for the rest of his life. How old is Morales? Michael Morales currently sits at 26 years of age. Nah, he's good. It's Brady who's got a little bit more of his back up against the wall when it comes time to get a title shot. I'm not saying it's now or never, but it's a little close. So that's the huge risk. You really have to admire Sean's. I mean, it's insane what he's trying. Oh, we did this one already. Is the relationship between Israel and the U.S. who is Batman and who is Robin? Well, we're Batman, but like only in a world where Robin has an unusual and different relationship to Batman than the Robin that we know. Some say Israel controls us. Others say they just do what we want. Can you shed light? I mean, it's a little bit of, it's column A, it's column B. We have these, there's obviously a strategic alliance for that part of the world to have territory like that in that place, particularly with those neighbors. If you're looking at from a point of U.S. hegemony, then that fulfills a strategic goal. Obviously, if you just enable Israel to do what they've done, which is bomb Syria, bomb Lebanon, bomb Palestine, bomb Qatar, bomb Yemen, you name it, they're bombing everybody. You can deplete Hezbollah, you can deplete Hamas, and Iran, you can, to an extent, deplete Iran. You can do a lot to minimize these sort of regional threats and be a more hegemonic force. Remember, a lot of these issues are, who's closely aligned with Iran. Russia has, some some military installations strategically located through the Middle East and parts of these countries that I've named. You could undermine, access to them or, the kind of force posture that they can maintain there. So of course there is that. But at the same time, John Mearsheimer is kind of an academic who has talked about this, which is that, the lobbying in the United States, the Israel lobby is a very, very powerful, very effective force. And so the combination of the two having these hegemonic aims and at the same time being subject to the intense lobbying that comes with any kind of special interest, particularly this one, you just get what you get. What do you make of Murzakanov's chances against Rakic next week? I have been impressed with Murzakonov's striking skills and composure, but Rakic will have significant height and reach advantage. Rakic to me is a bit of a mystery because Murzakanov seems like he's got a little bit faster hand speed. And though I think Rakic is a better overall athlete and certainly a bigger athlete, I feel like the moxie and the foot speed and the hand speed of Murzakanov might give him some real problems. And again, he puts punches in combination together too. Like some of these things, like they're uniquely. So it's a question of like, will Rakic wrestle him? Will Rakic lock up with him? Will Rakic press him against the fence and then make him fight in a completely different way? But I think if he fights him at range, honestly, what are the odds on that one? Let's see. He is Murzakanov. It's slightly favored. Slightly favored at -106 to Rakic's +100. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think people believe in Rakic as an athletic force, but he's kind of not been buttoned up like he needs to be. And Murzakanov feels like he can, do something with that. We kind of been on this one. Does the winner get a title shot? Brady would get a title shot. Morales would not, I don't think. Although that's a pretty big win, but even then, I don't think he would. K-Stack says, if state athletic commissions pay site fees for the UFC to come to them, it may be more the tourism board. How is that different than the Saudi government doing it? Because that's not the way that it works. The commission itself doesn't pay them. The tourism board might. The commission itself does the regulatory side and actually pulls a tax from them. But to your point, could the tourism board of Utah or Australia, that's what they do. It's just government contracting. The reason why that's less of an issue when, let's say, Australia does it or Utah does it is because they're not executing people en masse. They're not jailing journalists for tweets. They're not imprisoning people for what we would consider to be minor offenses. They're not engaging in genocide like Saudi Arabia did in Yemen. Like, there's a lot of, there's less, it's less morally complicated. Do we really need to see Merab versus Yan too? Yes. Did the matchmaker not watch the first fight? Oops, excuse me. Congrats in advance to Merab on the calendar year defense record. Yes, seeing guys defeat, I said this at the beginning of the show, seeing guys defeat rivals, I think, is actually pretty critical. 2 times over. Not every guy 2 times over, but the elite ones. You might have to do, he did it O'Malley twice, Yan twice. That's when you really begin to solidify who you are as a division mainstay. Thoughts on Cejudo versus Talbott? Good question. Seems like the UFC is banking on Cejudo being washed. Yeah, it seems to me like this is a cash him out kind of thing. Either Talbott is something that they can count on, and he'll beat Cejudo, and they can just send Cejudo off to the glue factory, or by contrast, Cejudo gets a win, but which doesn't do much for them, except it tells them what they've got with Talbott. Oops. Gamrot's in the wrong weight class. He got big brothered. I don't know if he got physically big brothered. I mean, he got his back taken, but he didn't. I don't think he's. No one to me has ever said he's a small lightweight. He's just an underskilled lightweight. Luke, realistically, if Conor fights Ilya at the White House, that's not realistic. How does the fight go? Conor gets waxed. What does the first round look like? Conor survives because he's had a pretty good chin, but I think Ilya beats the fuck out of him. Probably takes him down. Duronimer, you've said in the past that, quote, all forms of income ultimately reduce to some form of... What? All forms of income ultimately reduce to some form of immorality. Yes? Could you expound more on that point and how to get around it without encountering some form of moral conundrum? What money is good money? I've said this a million times. Like, again, how does this end up in your pocket without... Hold on. You guys ever heard of this? Here's the author. Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives. This book is incredible. Here's some of the praise on the back. If you've never read it, you can take a screenshot and see for yourself. As you indicated here, or you can see the sign, finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Guys, the environmental degradation that goes into that, the labor conditions that go into it, is not just, of course, with phones, sporting events, particularly now that they're having them in places that are of questionable ethical maintenance, but again, one among many issues. Point I'm trying to make is you could be buying a beer, you're working for a company, you're just trying to make it through your day, but that company engages in fucked up regulatory practices. Or I've had friends of mine who work on Wall Street who come home. Dude, when I lived in New York briefly, I had friends who worked on Wall Street. These guys were investment bankers. First of all, they never saw the sunlight. It was insane. And to the extent that they saw the sunlight, they came home so demoralized about the state of what working in finance actually meant. Some of them left it. Some of them stayed and got real rich. But, I suppose there must be some kind of way to have an ethical way to produce money and spend it ethically. But I just don't feel like in an massively intertwined world economy, there is such a thing as like an ethical way to make money sustainably over time in a way that you can feed yourself and your family. There are sort of smaller ways to pocket money that potentially are less problematic, but as part of the world economy in some kind of real way, there's just no such thing as ethical consumption. There's necessary consumption, and there's just parts of it we just let go because trying to reckon with all of the horrors that come from the chain of custody that led that iPhone to show up in your hand, it's almost too much to bear. That is a real thing. I don't think that there's any way to get around that. The thing that you can control is avoiding cartoonish bad money, you know, working for someone clearly engaged in law breaking, right? Maybe the rest of the world doesn't know it yet, but like you know that's how that you can do something about that. Like, you know what I mean? We just saw the Riyadh Comedy Festival thing again. It's like, you know, I'm not one of these people that like, if you had a foundation and they donated and it came with no strings attached, I actually don't give a shit about that. I mean, I guess Human Rights Watch does, but I wouldn't give a shit about that. But then when they make you perform a service for them, and then that service comes with constraints, and then you agree to it, you are taking cartoonishly evil money in that particular case, right? Um, so there's all kinds of ways you can avoid some of the more sinister ways in which it arrives at your door, whatever that may be, whether it's a boss that's breaking the law at your local job or whatever. There are ways to avoid that. But as a way to just live in modern society, how you can avoid these things, I don't know how the fuck you would avoid them. I just don't have any clue what that would even be. How would Hamzat do under ADCC rule set minus leg locks versus elite grapplers like Gordon Ryan and Nicky Rod? He might be able to stall him out, but he wouldn't win. He could stall. I mean, you saw Sean Brady stall out Craig Jones to like a tie when they removed leg locks. He could do that, but that's it. Any advice for dealing with family members enabling addiction, having codependent relationships with other family members? Brother, other than telling them to get help, and try to encourage them to get help. You know, if that's what's happening, you need someone who can be hands-on to give them the kind of help that they need. How you do that, I don't know. I've never had to deal with something like that. I've never had a codependency visible issue I ever had to navigate. I don't know what that would be. But if you're not seeing someone personally, potentially for your own issues, you could start doing that, and they might have some pretty good help. You could bring them to one of your sessions with you, right? That can happen too. We back? There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, well, now what's happening to my fucking internet? I mean, dude, I've replaced the fucking router and I've replaced the cord. What is there left to do? What is there left to do? Hold on. Ready? Did she turn off the internet? See what I mean? See what I mean? Yeah. Change the router, change the cord. I don't know what else to fucking do. I don't know what else to do. It's driving me absolutely fucking insane. Anyway, to answer this question, you have to get family help by a professional. Topology AI rankings suck. Hill greater than Roundtree, Leon greater than Brady. If the victor doesn't overtake, why fight? Ranking should be a cogent snapshot of now, not this holistic, I could do better with my couch. No. The argument would be, did you build something? There we are. We're back. I don't know what to do about this shit. Hang on. Let's do this. There. All right, I'm going to try and move through this. Odds of Paramount deal being illegal / corrupt in some way when you think about the size of the deal plus Ellison Trump Dana connection. Illegal? No, there's nothing illegal about it. What you're asking is, did they overpay for it? And was there some potentially pressure to pay as much as they did as some kind of unlisted but related to pressure to make the Skydance merger happen. Wouldn't surprise me if it was true. I certainly have no evidence of that. Best Stanley Kubrick film. My favorite is Full Metal Jacket, obviously. Top 3 Halloween horror films. I'm not a big horror guy. Nightmare on Elm Street's got to be one. Honestly, can you count Gremlins a little bit? A little bit, right? And maybe what's the one where the lady saws her head off with the piano wire? What's that one? Hereditary? Maybe that one. Why people are adamant for Tom to fight Pereira or Alex instead of taking out current heavyweight division to become superstar? Because the current heavyweight division sucks ass. It's really fucking terrible. That's why. Let's try this again. Here we go. Let's do this. Enter studio. Okay, very good. The Israel episode illustrates a broader problem, deference to credentials over rigor. His thesis offered an obvious conclusion with conceptual imprecision and methodological errors unworthy of epistemic authority. Yeah, that's basically true. It was shoddy. It was shoddy to the point of being uninteresting. Shoddy to the point of being banal. It's just that, dude, credentials are supposed to mean something. Like like for every Dr. Mike, where there is this promotion of an identity and selling of products based on this credentials and based on this identity, and it blows up in their face when under inspection. Like there's lots of like that's not the, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, certainly not in other fields where I've known people who got doctorates. It's really not the case. Like this is usually, I mean, no system is foolproof, certainly. They're usually pretty rigorous. These are usually pretty rigorous things. And it wasn't in this particular case, which shows you some of the limits. And there is certainly a heavy degree of credentialism involved in the Israel case. I would just caution people to throw the baby out, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Most people who are PhDs, again, not all, have done an enormous amount of work to put themselves in that position and gone through a pretty rigorous process in order to obtain it. What teammate fight in MMA history you would have liked to have seen? Koscheck and Fitch. Yeah. What do you think of Oliveira versus Patty and how that matchup would go down? I just feel like, I mean, maybe Oliveira is vulnerable in ways we don't fully appreciate because he got knocked out, but I feel like that'd be a bad matchup for Patty. Could be wrong. It's like all of Patty's strengths aren't Oliveira's better. He's just more durable. Or excuse me, Patty's more durable. Will Ronda turn her image around in MMA? I'll say this. She has the opportunity to do that. She has the opportunity to do that. Whether she will is a separate thing. Luke, going to UFC Vancouver, was wondering what your favorite live event you attended and what event did you regret not seeing live? There's never been an event I regretted not seeing live. Favorite one I've ever attended. Honestly, I might have had the most fun at Glory Last Man Standing. I mean, I'm working these events. It's hard to give you an answer to that. Maybe 229. Was that the one where Habib beat up Connor? Probably that one, maybe. Hey, Luke, my first full year as a freelance sports photographer went better than I could have imagined. Can you offer any advice on continuing to grow as a self-employed media professional, staying sustainable? I think the photography business is in a different world than the, take giving and analysis giving business. I don't know anything about that side. I know that, like, ladies like Esther Lynn have done incredibly well, but she's obviously very talented. The reality about if you're going to go independent, you have to have a network of events. You have to have like a model built in that you can reliably trust. And, photography is different because you got to be there to take photos. I don't have to be at events to cover them. So it's a very, very different kind of model. But in your particular case, just staying busy on the making connections in the industry part of your job, I think would go a long way. And then obviously deliver when it's time. But glad handing, I think in the photography space is going to be pretty important. These live chats are the best part of my week. God bless you and your family. Well, thank you, Julian. I appreciate it. Do you have to drink while watching U.S. politics? Yes. Yes, I am beyond dismayed at the state of our country. I don't know if we're going to make it. I read this paper on Hugo Chavez, and in it, they describe the conditions under which Hugo Chavez first came to power and the problems that ensued. And then the establishment kind of rejected him, but not really. They kind of just made peace with him. They didn't really lock him out from politics. They more decided, as an outsider, we're going to keep him at arm's length, but we're still going to keep him in the firmament of power, even after all the trouble he had caused. And that left the door open for him to then have an even bigger role in Venezuelan political life. And that is when everything came undone. It was because they did not slam the door on him when they had the opportunity. They in fact made compromise with him. And that is what fucked him over. And that is what we have done with our current incumbent. And I don't know what's going to happen. It looks like the Supreme Court's going to gut Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which is going to be calamitous. I mean, you guys know what the score is, right? They're trying to institute one rule, one party rule. They're not going to cancel elections. They're just going to make it so that it's very difficult for the opposition party to win elections in a broad. Dude, who the fuck blows up people's premiums up to 75%, which is what's going to happen? Like, this is not like even the Republicans don't deny this. It's going to happen. Did you see that the New York Times did a report? They're impounding money. The president is illegally impounding money so that the Congress is like appropriating this money for these things. And the Trump administration is saying who gets what. They've only impounded, I think, tens of millions on like Republican districts. They've done it to the tune of 20 billion in left-leaning districts. Like, it's clearly the imposition of one party, and they're having not just strength in the body politic more broadly, but imposing their force on the other party to make them incapable of winning elections so that they never have to worry about this. It's called competitive authoritarianism. That's clearly it's clearly what they're doing. It's not even debatable. That's exactly what the fuck they're doing. Right? That's why they're going after left-leaning cities. That's why they're impounding money for left-leaning districts. It is why they've tried to, it's not just with the Voting Rights Act, which the Supreme Court obviously is playing a substantial role in, but it's not the only way in which they're trying to undermine, this gerrymandering effort that they're trying to get going in various states, to lock this up. Why are they doing that? It's because they know that you govern the way that they're governing, where ICE agents are acting like absolute Gestapo fucking thugs, and you're creating this incredibly divisive relationship with half the electorate. You can't win in a sustainable way doing that. You can't do it. And the polling speaks to like people. Trump is broadly unpopular on virtually every issue. He's underwater on virtually every issue. You can't govern this way if you feel like you're going to incur the wrath of voters. But if you change the rules so that you don't have to face the voters in the same way anymore, or facing them doesn't mean the same things, well, now you have license to engage in a series of practices that would otherwise be electoral poison. This is the ball game. This is what they are doing. They are instituting, at the best they can, an attempt at one-party rule. And they're using this looks many different ways. It's various different mechanisms why they're trying it, but that's what they're trying. So how do I get through the day? I just fucking hope that there is a republic to save when this is all over. I don't know if there will be. At a gate to board a flight to Florida. Question: what is your entertainment plan during flights? I typically get work done on flights. I watched The Matrix on a flight recently. That was it. Just started judo at 25. Any advice? Buy Tylenol. Would you rather keep those terrible Apex fight nights or replace them with Dana White's Contender Series events spread throughout the year instead? I'll take the Contender Series spread throughout the year instead. Those Apex fight nights do nothing for me. They do nothing for me. Many are picking Holloway over Charles without considering Charles's grappling paths. Favoring Max is fine, But underrating Charles is short-sighted, in my opinion. I agree. Appreciate your work. MMA is lucky to have you. Thank you. It's very nice of you, Jalen. I take it as a 50-50 threat, honestly. Maybe I would slightly favor Max. But I agree. Charles' ability with his submission prowess is a threat to everybody. It didn't show up against, Ilya all that much, but in general, it is. I watched Liddell versus Silva live in all of BJ's fights. I'm still here, but in a much more limited and jaded way. See what I mean? Most of those donks aren't around, and the ones who are like this. That's what I'm talking about. NBA has preseason versus Israeli teams. IDF, Avdia on Blazers. Besides Kyrie Irving, no player mentions Gaza. NBA cares about civil rights and silent on genocide. Celebrate Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali and be so cowardly. Yeah, I don't know why Israel is allowed to participate in international sport at all. Why are they allowed to participate? I mean, if you look at various bylaws for UEFA or, international sport more broadly in most of these regulatory bodies, they've offended in such a way as to be disqualifying, but yet they still get to compete. I think that they should be, I think leagues and these various agencies should take into consideration not allowing them to compete. The ceasefire peace deal is fake, right? In all likelihood, yeah. Chris Hedges made this point. There have been 1 million peace deals between these two parties over the years, and they have all failed. What is it about this one that will last? Nothing. It'll eventually fall too. It creates a temporary moment in the bloodshed of, actually, Israel has already, they're still bombing people. They're bombing people in Khan Yunis and other places as well. So they've already violated the terms of the ceasefire, but at least there's a major cessation in the killing. But the aid is not flowing back into Gaza like it's supposed to. Israel's occupying, I think, greater than 50% of Gaza. Gaza was already a very locked space. This is even more confined now. I don't have a very optimistic view of what's going to happen there. If the peace plan can last, great, amazing. I'll give Trump all the credit in the world. I mean, by the way, like the peace deal, and I'll say this too, the peace deal that they went with was the same one that Biden could have forced. It's been on the table since Biden was in office, and they rejected it, and Trump accepted it. So, I mean, it's a little more complicated to it than that, but there is that the broad strokes of that are true. But this ends one way. They want the Palestinians gone, and they want to turn the territory into a Riviera. Merab may set the record for most rounds in a year. Jesus, that would be insane. Most rounds in a year. And not worse for the wear either. If Suto, Gaethje, and Usman received money from the Russian government to be filmed shooting weapons in Chechnya in November 2022, wouldn't this be circumventing sanctions? I think that the way that they got around that is because it was with the child of Kadyrov, not Kadyrov himself. So I think that was technically legal. Hey, Luke, thanks for replying to my email. I'm going to choose NYC over Chicago based on what you told me. Okay, very good. My question is, what do you think of the Silva-Weidman boxing match that got announced? I'm good. I don't. After everything that happened with Vanderlei, if you're over fucking 40, certainly if you're over 45, if any one of the two are over 45, I'm out. If your combined age is 90, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with it. I mean, we're going to watch the event here, but it's happening in Florida for a reason. It's gross. Just finished Zeke Hernandez's book. Thanks for the suggestion. It was a good read. I just wish he addressed a realistic figure in legal immigration. Surely there's a tipping point. Yes, it's the point at which I think whatever you're using to supply labor shortage ends, or what you need to make the social programs financially solvent. After that, there needs to be some kind of limit, but up to that point seems like a pretty good way to go about it. Do you still think that Shavkat will be champion soon? After all, he'll be returning to a stacked division. I don't know what we're going to get when he gets back. That's the problem. It's a great question. I don't know. We got to see how he looks. It's a great question. I don't know. Am I crazy for believing Islam wins with relative ease? He is among the pound for pound best. still in his prime. Islam by sub is free money. If he does, it would be such a big statement. I still think it'll be competitive. I'll put it that way. I think it'll be competitive. Oh, we did this one already. Do you believe the U.S. is so pro-Israel because Epstein had information on so many powerful people? This has gone on much longer than Epstein was ever around. Could it be a prevalent factor now in what information gets released? Potentially. But this is something my mom has been telling me about since the 1980s. So, no, is the answer. Just curious why there are gray bars on the sides of your stream. I believe a tighter shot would look cleaner. Your thoughts and reasoning. It's the wall. It's a gray wall. Because it's at 35 millimeters right here. And I like to keep it at that. Would Greg Giraldo have done the Riyadh comedy show? And I know you've shared that MMA isn't the sport of fighting. It is fighting as sport. Can you elaborate, please? Would Greg Giraldo have done it? Maybe. Maybe. Although he was such a free speech fucking edgelord, I don't know. But maybe. I mean, I would have never thought Bill would have done it, and then he did it. MMA isn't the sport of fighting. It is fighting as sport. I'm not sure that's exactly how I articulated it, because that doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe I did articulate it poorly. Oh, well, it's just the idea that you're taking something that happens, like fighting is a thing that happens more naturally in the animal kingdom and in the human world, and you're just putting best practices and rules around that to make it sport. Like, like running is like that to a degree, but baseball isn't a thing that like someone had to invent it, right? It isn't just like not now people are aware of it, but like it doesn't just naturally spontaneously happen on its own. And it didn't when it first came about. It had to evolve into something that people were trying to like play. Fighting is not that way. Fighting is a thing that naturally happens. It's a way that they use violence to adjudicate dispute. But you put rules and best practices around it. Now you can make it sport. Wouldn't Mikey Musumeci benefit the most from botting the match he's on? He wouldn't bot it. With becoming a free agent, it would be a great bargaining tool to say you drew $9 million. He wouldn't bot it. I don't think that'd be the case. I think if anybody bought it, it'd be UFC. How accurate was Full Metal Jacket's boot camp scenes? Arlie Ermy was a drill instructor, so his demeanor and the way in which he talked was extremely accurate. You don't get to so the way it worked for us is like okay, I mean, if you're out in the field, you'll take your weapon with you, and there could be times you were keeping a hold of it, but we never had live rounds unless you were like on the range, and then it's very, very structured about what rounds you have, how many have been expended. It's a very tightened process. You're not just like randomly carrying it around and you can just use it all the time, which is of course the scene how Private Pile kills himself in the end. Like that thing was very, that was heavily dramatized. I mean, you hear about recruits dying at MCRD Paris Island, but how often is it from like, self-inflicted gunshot wound? Like almost never. You hear from them drowning or some kind of training accident, or you know what I mean? So that part wasn't very realistic. There were certain licenses that they took, but like the hazing and like the squad bays and like what you're expected to do in the squad bays, pretty realistic. We did the CSAC meeting. My post had 6 likes. It completely ignored criticisms and concerns. Yeah, we did this one already. But thank you for the donation. I appreciate it. Luke, we are ordering Neapolitan for everyone in the chat. You want one too? No, I'm good, player. Name 4 heavyweights and 4 light. I can't do this. That could be signed to add depth and skill to those divisions and would present a problem for the top 5. I cannot name 4 light heavyweights that they should sign. At heavyweight, the only ones I can name really would be you could get Hedin Fajeda, you could get Anatoly Malikin, obviously Francis. You could do things like that. But dude, I don't know anybody at light. I got fucking annihilated on which is no surprise on Prop Quiz, because dude, podcast brain has completely fucked up my way in which I understand the sport, because of the nature of podcasting. Of course, you can have a podcast about anything, but the way it works is if you want an audience, you have to talk about the things that they care about the most, typically, not always, but typically, which means you're only really caring about main event, co-main event, some portions of the main card, and maybe like you have some remembrance of individual pieces of excellence on the prelim card, but in general, it's just in one ear out the other, because you don't have you have to focus on the other ones. And that just becomes a way you live. And so then, like, a decade goes by and you're like, I haven't really focused on the prelims in any kind of sustained way of terms of like banking it in my memory whatsoever, because of the way what my job is. My job is to focus on titles and records and, with some exception, of course. And it just completely has decimated my ability to do trivia like this. I can't do it. As a California combat sports fan, I am deeply saddened. Yeah. 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 They're all going to fold. They're all going to fold. The whole system is has collapsed in terms of like what they're supposed to do for the rights of athletes. The whole system has collapsed. Massey said a famous magician is in the Epstein files. Why is no one talking about David Blaine? I don't fucking know. Is Trump using the files to blackmail the deep state? No. He's in them. While I was rewatching Izzy Pereira 2 Full Fight on UFC's YouTube channel, I was interrupted with an ad from ICE saying they are hiring and recruiting and want to apply. What is this fucking sport? Someone told me it aired on this channel too, so I don't know how to stop that. But yeah, it aired on the pay-per-view broadcast too. Fucking fascism ads for the runts of the security apparatus pipeline. You know what I mean? Dog, do you know who covers their face? Like security covers their face? Fucking like South American countries, where I can assure you the state is not in a place that you're particularly fond of, and like security is not great, and like they don't have the same kinds of like civil protections. Like that's what we're fucking copying. Okay. Thanks for keeping it real. Love from Baltimore. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Look, I am a GA at Kent State, and my students are having a debate on PEDs. I pointed them towards your interviews on the topic. Thanks for all your work. Thank you. Thank you. I'd be curious to hear how the debate goes. Please follow up with me. Best 80s movies. Predator. Predator and Predator. Sorry if this was asked already. I'm late to today's episode. Do you think Oliveira's head movement improved enough to withstand and be successful against Max? No. To the extent that he gets placed at range, he's going to get lit up. Monthly reminder that Android users can use the Google Opinion Rewards app to answer surveys that reward cash that can be used to sub to Luke gift memberships or donate for questions in the live chat. Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate that. In my opinion, the UFC missed a golden opportunity, this person writes. They should have made Ilya versus JG and Patty versus Arman as the co-main on the same card. Imagine that press conference. Ilya versus Gaethje and then Patty versus Arman. Yes, that indeed would have been incredible. But I don't know what they're trying to do for Patty and who they're trying to save him for. That's the issue. LT, I enjoyed your Substack on AJ Cunningham. Have we entered the territory where it would literally take a hate crime being committed to get the UFC to take action against one of its fighters? Here's what I'm wondering. Like, we haven't really fully tested the limits. And this is nothing I'm recommending. This is nothing I support. This is nothing I want to see. But like, what about like racial slurs on stage? Can you imagine it? Can you imagine? Again, this is nothing I would ever support, nor am I asking for anyone to do it. Can you imagine if someone burned a Bible, burned the Quran, like, and then put it on social media, and what this would do, how this would inflame? Like, is this the kind of thing that we allow too? Like, I don't understand what. Like, dude, the UFC's policy is obviously not coherent because it's an anti-censorship model that still censors negative or critical information. And so the only thing you're left with is like outrageous forms of speech where like your mom's a whore and you can call someone, slurs. That's all you're left with because you've written out the other parts that are supposed to make an anti-censorship model like worthwhile, but we don't even get any of that. So like why hold on to the facade for a guy who's posting Nazi shit? Like, you know what I mean? Oh, we're upholding free speech, but you're not. You're not. Like, you're actually not doing that. So who gives a shit? Just cut them loose. No, like no one is going to be like, well, they just let the future go. If Merab beats Yan in December, where would you rank him? His 2025 again, it's no less than top 3 all-time best years ever. LT, did you see John Oliver's last week tonight on Bari Weiss? Yes, I did. He 10-7 that fucking show. He sure did. I put it in my Substack newsletter. Luke is right, but pretending that it's actually Trump doing all this is insane, but he's not that smart. He's the most of the puppet. Yeah, it's fucking Stephen Miller. He's a big part of it, but Trump is too senile to stop him. If Poatan wins, Aspinall and Jones, what will it position him in the GOAT debate? Well, he'd be probably number 1 at that point. To go big game hunting like that, he'd be number 1 or pretty close to it. Same thing. Who is going to be the next mayor of DC? I don't know. One of Mayor Bowser's top rivals decided to run for. We have one congressman here. They can only vote in committee. They can't vote on the floor. But to run for Eleanor Holmes, Eleanor Norton's seat. So that takes out a big rival. So I don't know. Bowser's got an interesting situation to deal with. We'll see. Anytime someone mentioned G. Brecka, you were quick to say Dr. Mike has debunked him. That's true. Please stop giving position of authority to people who prove a point. Okay, but the difference is Gary Brecka is also dunked on by other PhDs that I know. For example, Lane Norton. Like, dude, Gary Brecka talks about bullshit, grounding, and totally unscientific bullshit. It's not just Dr. Mike. Trust me. Rob said, I've noticed over the past 1 to 2 months, your free questions are basically all MMA, and your paid questions tend to be the majority, but not all political. Have you noticed this? Yes. And does it look like a potential off-ramp for the ailing MMA media? I don't have any desires to leave MMA media, but if I can add another lane, I would do that. Yeah. Do the Democrats need a big splash presidential candidate like Michelle Obama? No. You know what they need? They need free and fair elections. They need free and fair elections. They need to be able to have elections in a world where we're not ruled by one party because they've rigged the system to make opposition functionally irrelevant. That's what we need. All right. Thank you. Here's one for you. Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives. It is a sobering fucking read, but it's a good one just the same. I'll get this up on podcast. I'll get this up on Substack. Lots of different things. I don't know if we're going to have a live stream this weekend, but I'll definitely have some Sunday content for you for sure. All right? All right. Love you all so much. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. We're out of here. Until next time, stay frosty. Bye, bitches. Bye. Whoops.